All right, candidates, I'm gonna call you up. It's in alphabetical order by your last name, starting with our mayoral candidates and then going to our 4 town council candidates. First mayoral candidate we have is Scott Anderson. And if you can take the first seat over there, where'd you get your water?
Sorry.
Water.
I was saving it for you. No problem.
Next mayoral candidate we have is Natalie DiBernardo. And then you guys can share that mic, correct? Yeah. First town council candidate we have is Aaron Aferso.
There's a basket over there.
Second we have is Kenny Buckland. You guys can't applaud everybody. It's really okay.
Yeah.
We're all good. It's all good. Well, how do you think I feel? I'm the one saying. Third town council candidate we have is Monty Lyons. And certainly last but not least, we have Noah Munt. And I think we have enough microphones to be able to kind of share. Yeah,
I will.
and again, like, understand that they have not been given the questions. I hold all the power right here in this paper. Like, here we are. So please it is going to be really hard to answer these in a minute. So give some grace, understand not everything's going to be able to be covered in that minute. Good luck to all of you. I'm not sure I can do it in a minute, and here we are. Okay, starting with Scott, we're going to just work our way all the way down towards me. Our first, not really question, we're going to do an introduction. Introduce yourself, but in that, why are you running for the position you're running for? And if elected, what will your first priority be?
Dang it, I need my questions.
Thank you. To do this in 1 minute, I'll try and be real quick. My name is Scott Anderson. I'm currently the Vice Mayor of Gilbert. I've been on the town council for 8 years. I was Gilbert's planning director for 12 years and built a riparian preserve and worked there for 13 years. That's enough about my background, and you can read more about that on my website. Let me just tell you that I'm concerned about unity. You've been hearing a lot about that this week in recent events. I'm concerned about that, and especially so in Gilbert, because we've gone through the last couple of years in Gilbert of not being very united. Our council is in disarray, and we need to unite in order to address important ideas that are going to affect us in the future. And some of those ideas I'm sure we'll discuss tonight, which has to do with safety in the community. But the real reason that I'm running is to bring back that unity. I have all of the seated council supporting me, which is quite unusual, and I'm thankful for that support. So we can go forward and look to the future, because we're close to build out in Gilbert. We need to address things such as our economy, our prosperity in the community, which has to do with the quality of life, and our infrastructure, which builds wealth in our community. Those are issues we need to address, not ethics complaints, not code of conduct investigations. We need to spend our time working on the future of Gilbert and building a great future for our children and grandchildren. Thank you very much.
All right, you're up. Same question.
Wait, Natalie, really quick. So candidates, there are signs in the front. Green, go. Red, obviously a stop. Orange is your 30 seconds.
Thanks. So I'm Natalie DiBernardo, and I am a mom to 4 teens. I am an entrepreneur, and my family owns a preschool here in Gilbert. We're not in Gilbert anymore. I forget that. And I got into the race really last minute, but I got into the race because I am sitting on the sidelines. I've been involved for a long time, and I see Gilbert going in a direction that I'm not sure my kids can stay in 20 years. I don't want to move. I've buried a child here, so this is where I plan on staying, and I'm going to fight like the Dickens, because we're in church, until we get back to a place where I feel confident that we're going in a direction that I feel safe with my children staying, living, and being here. We have a very young and vibrant town, and we need a leadership that is looking forward to the future and planning for those kids. A third of our residents are under the age of 18, and they cannot speak for themselves. So it's important to have leadership that has them in mind at all times when we're making our decisions with our finances and with our police force and with our infrastructure. We need to be thinking about what it looks like in 20 years for
you need the question again, or you're good?
I think I'm okay. My name's Aaron Accurso. I am running for town council in Gilbert. And the three things that I really am focused on in my campaign and what I want to bring to the council is families first. We need a families first perspective on the council. It doesn't have to all be about business. We need to make sure that we're addressing the needs of our families and the individuals within our communities. That is probably the most important thing. Safe communities, hugely important. And the last is making sure we keep our government in its lane. I think a lot of times our government a town has gotten to the point where they're wanting to give us what we want, not necessarily what the town needs only. And it's gone too far in what it's trying to do for our community. It should be left up to the individual citizens to do those various things that the town government wasn't really created to do in the first place. Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
I am Kenny Buckland. I am born and raised in Arizona. My lovely wife, second row, sitting next to Councilman Torgerson. We have a blended family of 5 kids, 2 of whom serve in the U.S. Air Force right now. One is a PA in neurosurgery in Oregon, and 2 at ASU. So why me? Well, I retired from the town in 2016, so more than 8 years ago. Left leadership of the town and went into leadership in the private sector, where I've been for the last 8 years in various enterprises, large corporate, Amazon, small business. And ultimately, my why is because when enough people ask you to step in, everything that Scott had mentioned is true. And there are problems, missiles being fired, our tax dollars are being used for mediation. That's just unacceptable. I want to bring respect and civility back to the dais, where we can agree to disagree, still get along, continue to move and set good policy for the top staff to execute.
That should be it. All right, very good. I'm Monty Lyons, and I am also running for town council. I'm a United States Air Force veteran, been in the aerospace industry for over 40-some years, ran engineering teams, building and flight testing aircraft. I currently am the director of facilities for a major aerospace company. I have 75 facilities around the world that I'm responsible for keeping running. My family and I live here in the Gilbert area. I have 7 children, 4 in service. And I have 8 grandchildren that live here as well, so I'm a vested interest in this community. The reason that I ran, which I think this is critically important, is something Scott alluded to too. We're getting to the point in the town of Gilbert where we're reaching build out, and as a result, there's going to be a lot of need for infrastructure, development, and sustainment. Part of that also too is our law enforcement, our fire, and the other type of services that provide us the type of things that I think this group is looking for as far as safety and response. So that's something that I'm very interested in and want to make sure that we have the adequate resources there, and we'll work with the council to do that. The second thing, I have encountered a couple times, we ran into some issues around some things that happened where somebody wasn't prosecuted. I want to make sure we have the resources to be able to do that as well. So thank you.
Okay, once again, last but not least, I'm Noah Munt. I'm running for Gilbert Town Council. And so I've lived here since 2010. I have 3 kids and my wife. I've been on the planning commission for 6 years. I'm the current chairman. Before that, I served on a board where we have done funding for the water and wastewater systems. I'm an engineer who's worked in energy and water, and I started a consulting technology firm and ran that in Gilbert for 6 years as well. And the reason I'm running is I have a daughter who just graduated from high school, and I have 2 kids, boys, that are in elementary school, and seeing the fact that the community doesn't feel as though they are being represented, nor that the leadership is speaking their language, I felt that perhaps that was some place where I could possibly fill a gap and be able to say things that other people weren't willing to. And so, thanks for having me, and I look forward to it.
All right, thank you guys. So now here are the real questions. Those were easy. Here's the real stuff. So we talked about the teams. I have 2 teen boys. Bridget has a teen daughter. So we know for us it's for surely a a big thing in our world. We want to make sure that they're doing all right. Can you give one example of how you believe the police department can interact differently with the youth and our community? Yeah,
we're very fortunate that we have a police department that has tried to, and they've made a lot of progress. We're autism certified, so they are now more trained on how to interact with people who are not neurotypical, which is a great step. I think one of the biggest things that we need to do is growing up here. My brother-in-law got arrested at 17 for doing worship in the park past curfew. So that's ridiculous. We shouldn't go around arresting teens, don't get me, for doing worship in the park. But there was a sense of, if you got caught, you were going to get some sort of accountability and some sort of action. And our teens need to know, if you get in trouble, you are going to have to be accountable for that. And so I think that we need to look at the way that we approach teenagers and the system by which they are monitored and held accountable. I think that it needs to be more instruction-based, and there needs to be more diversion programs available to them, so that kids, when they got caught doing something small, it doesn't turn into something big, because we've really worked on the root issue of why they're out doing that in the first place. And I think that's just going to take us really allowing our police department to get out there and actually spend time in the community. If that means we have to spend more money, that's one thing that we're spending money on. They need to be in there. We need to make sure there's enough of them, because I'm just not convinced that we really have enough.
Thank you. Scott, I'm going to do the mayoral candidates first. So Scott, you're up.
Thank you. It just so happens that in this current budget year, we've approved a position in the police department just for working with teens. And we're looking forward to the progress that will be made there. We also have in our budget a advocacy center, which will, I'm sure, have an opportunity to have teens working there with those who staff that center once it's built. As you probably all know, we have SROs in the high schools and the junior highs. One thing I found visiting those schools is that there's a need to work with the school district to partner, especially with security in the schools, to help those SROs. And that's one of the greatest tools I think we have at our disposal, is to find effective security that can work with our SROs in the schools. And we have council liaisons that are working with each of the school districts right now to talk about doing that very thing, so that we can get more presence in the schools to help with teens there.
Perfect, thank you. All right, sorry, Aaron, we're going to start at the end here. We're going to do
Okay, put me on the spot. All right, so, the one thing that I think there's a major disconnect in is the ability for people to understand the methods that the police use in investigations. And, a lot of things we've seen in the public, we see where there's videos posted online. It seems completely counterintuitive as to how in the world could you not be doing something about this. And then when you ask questions, there's a lot of times that you're met with sort of a wall of, well, there's an investigation. And I think that there needs to be much more forthright communication of, here are the processes with which prosecution happens. And there needs to be a feeling in the community that I'm safe to go and say something to the police about an activity that's happening. And I know we just built the Victim Advocacy Center, and hopefully that can do something in the way of helping this. But I don't really have any silver bullet that will solve this problem. I think that it's a community problem, and I think that it's a listening and an empathy problem, and I think that as police, they need to be able to get onto the level of individuals and families and understand the things they're going through, and help them to understand, here's some things that are limiting us, and the community needs to find a way to work through that.
To kind of piggyback on what he was saying, I think it's important that the community, and especially our kids, get exposure to what the police department actually does. It is critical that they understand the job that those men and women do each day. And in understanding that, they're given the ability to be able to realize the service they do provide and the role that we as a community play in interacting with our police departments and the services that they provide. I think oftentimes, and I know most people that I've ran into have a negative opinion of the police, as they see them as just enforcing rules. Well, there is a proactive side of law enforcement, which is engaging the people, and there's outreaches that take place. But that outreach goes both ways. The police can reach out into the community and try to do things, but we as parents need to encourage our kids And our teachers need to encourage our kids to engage with the police department where they work. Understand the processes, understand what they do, what their limitations are, and where they can be effective at. So I think that that's an important thing to do, and that would be one of the things that I would look at.
Test. This is a tough one to do in a minute because I retired from Gilbert PD 8 years ago. I was second in command of the PD. So this is really multifaceted. One, breaks my heart that the lack of trust that exists today, it wasn't there just 8-10 years ago. I remember children would ask us for our autographs. Now I'm talking to teachers and they're telling me that they're not just junior high, not just high school, but their elementary school children do not trust the police. That's a problem. Do you know that when the Devil Dogs investigation launched, the intel that came from that was they were teens, but it was to a detective who was their officer, and they trusted her, and they gave her information, and that led to all those arrests. We need to re-engage with our youth, with programs that the children trust us once again. We need to re-engage with transparency with the parents, because when the parents speak ill about the police, their children hear it, right? They hear it and they respond to it.
So I've thought about this many times, a lot, and one particular action I think that would be very simple, I think it would be very simple, I would encourage our staff to look at it, would be to get one way to get our police out into the community more and engage directly with the parents, the teens, and the super young as well, so that they become comfortable with them, is to, when a holiday comes around, there's a block party going on. They have to, the community has to pull a permit to get that block party, to get the barriers and things like that. Inform the police department so they can send an officer or a couple of officers out to engage in a friendly manner with the public while they're having this party. Put them in a friendly situation, allow the public to communicate with the police department, recreate that trust that you were talking about that used to exist, and make the police officers friends to the public so that they feel comfortable coming forward to report things and become friends with the police department and not feel intimidated by them.
All right. Scott, you actually touched on this, which is why we're going to do this question next. Talking about the school resource officers. So addressing teen violence and bullying is a critical issue in our schools, as highlighted recently with the Gilbert Goons and the Preston Ward case, and any high school in the area you could, or any kid you talk to. What policies and initiatives will you as mayor or council work as a liaison to ensure safety not only in the community, but with the SROs and school districts against a zero tolerance policy to prevent bullying and violence, including sexual assault in our local schools, to ensure a safe learning environment? Scott, how do you start?
Wow.
That's a really long question, so I apologize. I can repeat it if needed.
By the way, great ideas. I look forward to working with whoever gets elected. So, as I mentioned with the SROs, I actually made a visit to all the schools that did have SRO in the schools, and they all told me the same thing, that they feel like they're doing an effective job, but the real consideration is for the security that is offered to support the SROs, and that's something I'd like to see emphasized, is not only the number of security personnel, but also the quality of those personnel. We have, and to address the last part of that, we have actually established a community engagement task force that will be working over the next 6 months just specifically for those things that were just mentioned. And it has to do with all the aspects of teen violence, and we'll address each of those issues that she brought up. And we look forward to receiving their recommendations by the end of the year so that we can take further action after the action we've already taken in passing the brass knuckles ordinance and also the ordinance about unruly gatherings. And we look forward to more action on items from the task force.
So this is an interesting one because if you talk to the officers and if you talk to the kids, you often get different answers. I've talked to Williamsville high school kids, and they don't feel very comfortable with their SRO, and it's not because he's doing anything wrong, it's because if a young girl doesn't feel comfortable talking to a male officer, that can inhibit communication. There are a lot of things that we can do, and there is an organization called youth.gov, and there's a bunch of cities that are partnering together on the East Coast to share information, to share data, because a lot of cities have been fighting this for decades. And it's new to Gilbert, but it's not new to the United States. And so sometimes we have to set our egos aside and say, this isn't the first community that's ever had problems, and we need to look to what other communities have done. So I've been doing deep dives into that, and there are a lot of fantastic programs. They're doing therapy dogs at school with the SRO officers, because kids who don't feel comfortable will feel comfortable if the officer has an animal. It gives them an instant bond to the SRO. But there are different classroom management that we can do as well that will build more of the, I'm going into it, it's very hard to answer these, but there's a lot that we can do, but it all boils down to communication. So I want to do monthly meetings with the school boards, each school district, because that has completely gone away over the last, I don't know if you call it administration, but.
All right, Aaron, I'll start with you.
Can you quickly just nutshell it for me again?
You didn't hear the whole thing. Okay. So we're actually looking at teen violence, the bullying and everything. We're having sexual assault in the schools and all that stuff. When you are part of the council, how are you going to be a liaison to ensure safety, not only in our community, but within our schools to make sure that we have a safe learning environment?
I really think that in being a liaison, I want to be an open ear to parents, to families, to come forward and voice their issues and help connect people that they can get in contact with and make sure that the connections are made to the right places, the right people. And that would be a liaison directly with the parents, with the teachers as well. I would encourage all of the elected officials to be that go-to person to create, the general public in generally does not know who to go to, but they see us as the leaders. We need to invest ourselves in knowing who to go to and be able to be that resource to point in the right direction. Not necessarily solve the problem ourselves as a group even, but be able to point to another group, another organization that can help with that situation.
Thank you.
Test. All right. So, as a liaison, there's many directions that can go. One, we need to be a good liaison to our own town and our police department. In days past, the SROs would actually teach. When they taught, they connected with the kids in the classes. And then about 10 years ago, the whole philosophy changed. With the school shootings, we went to a purely security standpoint. And that security mindset can just psychologically disconnect you from those kids. So what we have to do is be a good partner to the PD, and we need to give them enough staffing so that they can, they have people to engage. When they're running call to call to call, they're not out enforcing curfew, which gets kids off the street before they get hurt at night, the times when most injuries and fatalities happen with our youth. So we need to get them staffed properly. We need to partner with our school districts so that we're on the same page, we're connecting, we're relating, and we've got to re-engage with our youth, building trust back that we once had.
Thank you.
All right, for me, can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay. For me, one of the things that I struggle with this particular question is I think it needs more than a minute to answer, frankly. Yeah. To me, what we are dealing with is a reflection of what's going on in our hearts as a community. That to me is where the root is. We need to figure that out. So to look to the council, the government, police, whatever, to solve that problem, they're going to be able to enforce it with a stick, but the heart has to be changed. And it begins in the home, and it begins with us as parents. Okay? So to answer your question about being a liaison, I do have a master's degree in mediation, arbitration, and negotiation. I was a union steward for a while, sat on the other side of the table, so I've had to deal with some pretty intense conflict. The thing is this, is that as a liaison, I think we need to be able to put some things in place to help parents know how to connect and begin doing that heart change. Provide some resources, some tools that are needed to work that, because our kids become what we model for them, just frankly. And so like I said, this is one that takes a little bit of time to answer, and that's my, at this point. Thank you.
The lights, okay. They just had me turned down. Smart. All right, so, first things first, there's no amount of, I don't believe this is a budget line item thing of, well, we're going to put 4 more police and then therefore the problem's solved. I mean, that all too often in our society, we think that if we just have some line item on it, poof, there's the solve. Throw a bunch of money at solar, now it's all green energy. No, it doesn't work. Our kids are growing up in a completely different world with a supply side economy that is continuously bombarding them with, you are not good enough, look at how good these people are doing, or look at the crazy things that these other people are doing. And there's no consequences. You can do it, do it, do it. And at some point it has to come back into the reality with what they're dealing with are things that none of us have ever had to. And understanding how to get to them, I don't know. I think that just being able to say, as father of a daughter who's dealt with God knows how many issues related to image, body image, all of the things that teenage girls deal with, and trying to work through it to say, this is unrealistic. And the same thing that all the parents in here have dealt with. Why in the world would it possibly be okay to post awful things on a public forum? It makes no sense. And somehow that needs to come back into reality of you cannot do this, and that the parents, teachers, council, and everyone as human beings needs to work on it.
Yeah, we're on. I just want to clarify too. I know a couple of people did ask while I was standing back there. So these questions, the ones that we've been asking, are the ones that were pre-submitted by the community. So after these there's like 2 or 3 more that were pre-submitted, then we will go straight to the basket of questions. So again, this is the first part of the community pre-submitted. Going back to teen violence, and before I ask this question, I do want to open this up just as far as, again, social media played a major role in all of the teen violence, assaults, as well as continued information. As more comes to light, there's a lot of conversation on social media. Me personally, I'd rather go and have a conversation with each and every single one of the candidates. I've spent a lot of time in council meetings and personal conversations. So I do want to open this question up. This one is specifically from the community for Kenny. If we would like to take this to 2 minutes, I would like to give you that space. Your nephew has been convicted as one of the teens who is responsible for multiple brass knuckle attacks. Do you support the brass knuckle ban? As a former high-ranking law enforcement officer with Gilbert PD, do you think Gilbert PD handled the Gilbert Goons investigation well? And with that disclaimer, it is ongoing, but I would like to give that question back to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's on. No, absolutely. First question, do I support the ban? 100%. Did you see what happened to that melon? Right? And I know what happened to our youth. So I absolutely support it. What I don't want to happen, though, is that we get keyed in on just that and forget that we have a felony aggravated assault when it's used, and we have to prosecute it every single time. No breaks. Right? No breaks. It's violence. Part 2 was my rating of the police department.
Yes.
So right now I will tell you it's too early to tell. The investigation is ongoing. Prosecution is still, some have occurred. There's been some pled out. There's some that are still waiting. So I think it's too early to comment on that. I do think once this is all done, and this is the hard part, being patient is very, very difficult, especially when we get on social media and we start talking and we get our emotions going, and we're a society that wants everything now. And there's always a risk when the police department's trying to be transparent. Where I come from, we need to be as transparent as possible without causing risk to that case. Because if we say something that gets tossed out of court, then the police department is going to be under scrutiny for not maintaining case integrity, for allowing cases to go unprosecuted. So it's a really delicate balance. What I would ask for is patience. At the end, I don't know if there will be or not, but there may be an after action report, which is just an investigation review that looks at everything that happened, how it happened. Is there anything that could have been done differently? That's when you get your answers to be able to rate them. In the meantime, I would just ask for patience and let the police and the prosecutors do what they do. I do think the truth will come out in the end if we can all just be a little bit patient.
All right. I think we're getting close to time, so I'm going to ask one more question of you guys, and then we're going to that fancy bucket back there. And I think I have a card up here already that's pre-written. So, when people run for office, they always like the term, like, we need change. And at the end of the day, you are one vote out of 7. To create change, you must convince at least 3 other council members to agree with you. We have seen an ineffective mayor and council not be able to get a consensus. What have you done in your campaign to make citizens of Gilbert believe that you can get a consensus of at least 3 and not be another ineffective waste of a 4-year seat? I didn't ask it. I mean, I'm just the reader. Remember that. I didn't write these. Yes, it's good, but it's you, and then you have to convince. Yes, you have to get it. It's a hard one. You want to start it?
Of course, why not? Throw me right into the hole. So, I don't know, I myself, I find that working with people is something that is innately involved in business, family, anything you do. You have to be able to talk to people, listen, and listen more than you talk. And as a politician, which I was considered, I'm not, but that's a full boss saying now that nobody's a politician running for office. But I really do enjoy listening to people and hearing the different perspectives. I mean, Gilbert has come from 1980, 10,000, 15,000 people to nearly 300. And there's people here that were here then, and there's people that have moved here now. And there's a vast difference in the way that they see the community. And being able to understand where they're coming from, what their values are, and then being able to correlate that, I think is something that all of us should do. And hopefully that's what I can do on the council. And I like to think that anybody has an opinion, that everybody that's running for office is doing it for a good reason. And that their opinion just happens to be a possible difference in an ethos of something I think of. It does not make them a bad person. And therefore that's not what I would bring to say, okay, we may have a disagreement. Is there a consensus we can come to? And I believe we will.
One of the things to say as far as modeling, the 4 of us that are running for town council, I don't think we've said anything negative about any of us. So I think that's a positive and we're trying to model that. And really it's engaging. Like I said, I have a master's in mediation, and one of the things that's important that they teach you right away, you gotta understand everybody coming to a conflict has an interest that they're trying to advocate for. Understanding, building relationships with people, whoever may be sitting there and whoever may be currently there, understanding how they think, what's important to them, what position they're coming from, what place in life are they looking at things from. Taking that into consideration when you end up where you're on the opposite side of the equation will help you find a solution, because I find more often than not we have more in common than we have separate, to be honest with you. So I'll be looking at it from that perspective.
So what I do at work, I'm a senior director of strategic partnerships and relationships. That's what I do. I build bridges, I build alignment, and I build synergy for businesses to grow 10x. What I hope to do here, if elected, is to bring alignment, bring respect, bring civility, bring that synergy back to that dais where the council is setting policy, letting staff execute, holding them accountable to that, and then you, the communities, holding, if I'm elected or if I'm not one of these guys, accountable, right, to do our job the right way. Stop meddling in the weeds, look at the big picture, align, build bridges with others, Chandler, Mesa councils, our school districts. That's what we got to do. I do know this. I know every city and council member and the mayor now. I know everyone very well sitting here to my left and my right, and I know that I can work civilly, respectfully, and responsibly with any one of them. Thank you.
I'm a big believer in understanding an entire problem, not just from my perspective and not just from your perspective. I believe that when we approach anything, any of these issues, we all come forward with our principles in mind, but we need to hear about everything around that issue so that we can adjust our decision to be appropriate for that. Not necessarily going outside of our principles, but I'm willing to listen and talk and discuss so I can understand where the other is coming from, so that I can make sure that we come to the best decision. I do believe that many minds make much better decisions than one mind does. So it's important that we all are able to hear what each other are saying, potentially respectfully disagree, but then come together and move forward in the best way possible. I think that becomes the best decision that's going to be made for our town as we enter into those types of discussions.
So, I hope this is what I have shown all of you during my campaign, because my core belief system is connection. Without connection, we have nothing. And connection is so important, and that piece of connection is what holds you together when you're making the tough negotiations, when you're having the tough conversations. And you have to have that connection piece so that when it comes time to have those tough conversations, we can disagree, we can build consensus, but then we can also come back and say, okay, we still have our connection, we're still good. And that carries in every single thing that you do with our kids. Leadership is connection. If you don't connect with the people that you're leading, you will get nothing done. So I hope I have showed that to everyone. Also, I think that it's important to not have an ego when you're making these kinds of decisions and conversations, because it's not about what I want, it's about the entire goal. And what I want is not what you want, what the people want. So we have to come together and be able to really set egos aside. So I hope those are the two principles that I have shown that would make me different from other leaders.
Thank you, I think.
It might be on now. Yes, attorney turns it on.
I'll remind you that I mentioned a few minutes ago that I have the entire seated council supporting me at this time. It's time for unity on the council. I mentioned that we've got to get through all of these ethics complaints. We've got to get through these endless investigations about our conduct on the council. It's time to get back to work, and I look forward to working with any of these council members as well as those who are seated on the council now. The one thing that I would remind you of is that for me, it's working with the vision of the future that we need to address as a council, and the only way we can do that is if we're unified. We can agree on or disagree on some points, but we need to unify for the common good of Gilbert. I've been accused of being Bridget 2.0. Let me tell you right now that you will not get Bridget 2.0 with me. You will get an all mayor and no drama with Scott Anderson. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to go to the cards now, and I do want to say we did put a stack of them down just because, again, for the sake of time, majority of those cover teen violence, police, current investigations. Please take that to the current council on August 6th. So with that, and for the sake of time, this is all, but if we can turn it to just the mayor candidates. Please tell me how you think social media and digital assets and artificial intelligence play into the future of Gilbert. Let's start with Natalie. Okay.
Sorry. Well, this is hot mic. It's very tricky, right? I am the kind of person, I don't let my teenagers have social media. Social media is unchecked is a problem. So the reality is, I see it's a necessary part of our future. It's a big function of communication. We have to use it responsibly. AI is a powerful tool when used correctly. I see it's definitely going to be in our future, whether I like it or not. But the reality is we need to equip our residents with better information about how that technology affects our children, affects our town, and affects our privacy. So as much as we embrace it, we also need to educate ourselves so that it doesn't become a weapon and it have unintended consequences that have a negative effect on our young people and even on adults.
Thank you. Scott?
Our digital government office has gone through a little bit of turmoil here the last year, so I think maybe you are aware of that. We have made some changes, and we look forward to some positive things coming from the digital office. As Natalie said, it's important that we be able to be transparent and that we communicate with the public. Our 311 line is very important. We get a lot of information from that line when people call in. AI is important to the future of the town. We have a specific position that's been dedicated just for that purpose. And we look forward to the results from that position and what it will bring to the town and actually demonstrating how we work in the digital world in the future.
Thank you. Next question. Let's go with council candidates. Thoughts on the downtown Water River Walk? I'm just reading cards. Whoever wants to take it, not everyone has to answer that. Whoever wants to take it, that.
I was gonna say this actually.
I'm just having comedy and reading the cards.
Well, honestly, it comes in very good with the last question and kind of piggybacks in. There is no river, being planned down Gilbert Road. As fun as it would be, and I'm sure Natalie, as an Italian, would think it's great. Just have a big stick on the road and go get some pizza. But I don't believe that that's even real. And it was a funny article. It was Satire, and one of my, The Onion is a favorite newspaper of mine that is also satire. So I don't know. I hope that answers it.
Perfect. Thanks for taking that one. Thanks to whoever wrote that.
But there is a canal.
It doesn't usually have water, so here we are. All right, again, same thing, I'm just reading cards. I did not make them up. What? I don't even know what, no, I'm just kidding. So I have a couple of things to do with utilities. So we have questioning again, says, can we be open and honest that recycling is a net loss? Aluminum is the only thing that is cheaper to recycle than make new. How much could we save if we had half the trucks, half the drivers, and half the fuel costs? But then also with that, because it's all on the same bill, water rates have risen during a financially stressful time, and we face a drought, higher population, that means higher demand and scarce supply. If you guys could share your thoughts on that. Let's start with Aaron.
Thank you. The first thing about recycling, I actually completely agree with the sentiment of the question in that recycling doesn't give us a lot of return. It makes us feel good, but it doesn't give our community or our society much of a return, especially when it's non-aluminum recycling. In fact, my wife and I, we, a number of years ago, knowing of the net loss, wanted to save the town money and removed ourselves from submitting recycling to the community because it was more expensive than for the city or the town rather to process our trash. So I believe that we should be focused on recycling specific things, not everything, and reducing the cost of government. With regards to the water rate increase, I understand that there was a need for that, but I'm not. What I'm concerned about is did our town look at all the possibilities of making adjustments so that it reduce the cost of service in order to not increase the bill to the community.
So for part one, we tend to live in the poles often, extremes. It's super green or it's not at all, and I do think that there has to be balance in there somewhere. I think we do need to be smart about our recycling, right? We do need to consider our return on our investment, right, and not go broke doing it. We do need to do due diligence to make sure that there's balance. What I do not have is the answers to that here, right? So clearly something we need to be considering as we move hopefully towards these goals. And part two, water. Timing sucks, I get it. Gas is up, groceries are up. I'm right there with you. I do know that the town did a lot of due diligence in considering whether or not to raise the rates, what they should be. Coming from Scottsdale, Arizona, I can tell you it was 10 times worse. 10 times worse. I'm not making that as an excuse for us. Just saying I have been elsewhere where it's a whole lot worse. So I do appreciate the town's due diligence to that, to making sure it wasn't a massive increase compared with what I had up in Scottsdale.
This is, you guys hear me? Yeah, there we go. All right. This is something that I'm going to say I don't know enough about to be able to critique. I'll put it that way. I do know the cost of getting us water is what it costs us. That's all that they can charge us. At least that's my understanding of how the system works. As far as the recycling side of the equation, I've just never done it. I'm just going to be honest with you. I've never had a recycle can when they had it there. If I used it, fine. If I didn't, fine. I've always found it to be a waste of time, and I knew about the cost and realized the struggles with it, and don't really have a lot of aluminum cans, so that does that. I think that what people need to understand, and this is why one of the reasons I got into this race, we've got a lot of critical infrastructure around water, pipes in the ground and our processing plants and stuff like that. Not only do we need to do some replacement of these things soon, but we're going to have to plan money ahead to be able to keep the ones we have maintained, the new ones maintained, and replaced at a future time. So it's critical that we take a hard look at this, and I know in talking with some of the folks in town, they've been doing that. And we need to understand too, like when we go to the gas pump, we're paying more money. I think the town has kept some costs down. It could be worse. I know I'm paying double what I did in gas years ago. It cost me $160 to fill up each truck. So keep that in mind, and I realize it's hurting all of us. So.
Okay, well, as many of you may know, I'm an environmental engineer and a professional civil engineer who's worked in water, and so the whole recycling question is probably something that everybody would think no one wants to put, say, the whale stickers on everyone's car and drive around. But I think all too often people forget that sustainability is not just simply a shiny word that deals in putting up solar panels or recycling. It deals in financial and fiduciary responsibility to be able to maintain those systems. And so if the recycling is a net negative cost, then more money should be placed into finding ways that people understand how to reduce that amount, not into placating people, because how many of the people know that? They might just fill their blue bucket, drag it out to the road, hooray, I saved the babies. Well, you didn't. And that's a communication thing. We need to let people know. And the second part of this question then is into the water rates. And first of all, I think what people need to understand is we have paid a massively subsidized rate of water. My parents are from Green Bay, Wisconsin, on the largest freshwater reserve that exists in North America, and they pay 3x what I do for water in a desert under level 2 drought conditions. Now, this is not saying that we should just jack it up and away we go down the crazy train, but what we need to do is to think, how do we stop those people who are overusing, but keep it effectively cost effective for those people who are just using the amount to keep their family clean and hydrated.
Go Wisconsin. Yes, sir.
I'll just add to what's been said that recycling is totally market driven. And you can thank China that we're not recycling a lot of material. There's material we've been sending to China and they've rejected that material because it's contaminated. And so they're not taking any glass products, they're not taking other products. And so we have to identify other markets, and that's difficult to do. There aren't a lot of markets for recycling material. We're still okay with newspaper, we're still okay with aluminum, still okay with plastic bottles. We still have some markets that we've identified. There are people that there are other communities that are discontinuing recycling totally because of that very thing. When we survey our community, they've told us overwhelmingly, don't stop that service. We don't care whether there are markets or not, but please continue to recycle. We're trying to respond to the community, but we do keep an eye on it. As far as water is concerned, I think it's been mentioned that we don't make any money on water. Water costs money to buy, it costs money to transport, it costs money to treat, and it costs money to deliver. And I don't think you've seen your bills go down in the last 4 years in anything else. Food, gas, other things have not gone down, neither has the cost of water. We're working very hard. You know, there's a shortage on the Colorado River. We like to say there's a shortage on the river, but not at the tap. But those reservoirs are only about 40% full, Lake Mead and Lake Powell. The reservoirs in the SRP system, like Salt River and Verde River, are about 80%. And so we're working to try and mingle those resources together so that we have a reliable source into the future. But water, we don't make any money at all. As already has been mentioned, that's a cost to deliver, and that's the only cost to state.
All right, guys. Recycling, they've all covered it, but you have to start using these. You gotta stop using these plastic. Because it really does start with us, and it's really important that citizens do that for themselves because plastic is so bad for all of us. But with the water, I have a little bit of water is so important, and it is scarce, and being an Arizona girl, I know this. I would argue we don't pay enough for water. Like Noah said, our water, the actual cost of our water, we're not charging enough. Our service fee went up extremely. That was what you guys saw as the jump, and that will never go down, right? You can't control that as the resident. So I filled my pool recently. My first time having a pool, everyone growing up here said, oh, it's so expensive to fill your pool. It cost me $34 to fill my 15,000-gallon pool. That's insane. I should have paid more than that. My neighbor next door, who's an elderly couple on a fixed budget, their bill shouldn't have gone up $20 extra. And I get it, they want predictability when we're talking about budgeting for water because we have to maintain and fix our water systems. We need to. But I would like to revisit the idea of charging more for those who use an exorbitant amount of water, because the only way we really actually encourage conservation is charging more for high usage. So if I fill my pool, I should pay more than my neighbor who has all desert landscaping, and they're doing that on purpose to save money. So I think that is a more fair, practical application of how it is done, and I would like to look at it if that's going forward would be better than just raising everyone's bill because we have no control over that.
We're coming to the end. So mayoral candidates. People are starting to be concerned about the number of apartments that are being built in our town. We want it to be family friendly. Says in 15 years in Gilbert, will look like Mesa with aging complexes as developers moved on. Do you feel enough is enough and support an end to construction approvals? Biggest concerns are schools, traffic capacity, and shopping crowds. Natalie, we'll start with you.
Okay. Yeah, so this is a tough one because as a resident, I feel the same way. I live on Higley and Ray. I love my plaza at Epicenter. There is a giant one going up right next door, and already traffic is bad. My son and I almost got hit crossing the crosswalk. It has a lot of problems. A lot of those have already been approved, so I don't know that there's anything that I can do about it, but the overall consensus from residents is no more. I believe as a mayor, I represent people, I don't represent developers. We need to attract long-term stakeholders so that they don't leave like they did in Mesa. So Epicenter is the perfect example of that. He's a long-term stakeholder, he's been here, he cares about what happens there because he lives there, he works here. So I think if we're going to do developments, we need to make sure we're attracting long-term stakeholders so they don't leave and it doesn't become run down like it has in other towns.
We have a housing crisis in the valley. I don't know if you've noticed that. And we have to address that, and it has to be a multi-pronged approach. It's going to include multifamily, single family. The state just recently adopted a statute that requires that we allow some multifamily in the single family neighborhoods. And we also have to look at other innovative ideas that the home builders are looking at. Because right now, the average home in Gilbert is over $500,000. Your kids can't afford to live here. Neither can your grandkids. We have to find, as I mentioned, one of our important elements of growing into the future is our employment base, which supports our economy. If they can't live here, they can't work here. And I've heard too many times, let them go live somewhere else. We can't do that. We can't let them go live somewhere else. And just as a matter of fact, the overall percentage of apartments that are in Gilbert right now is about 11% of our total housing stock. That's a very small number when you consider that adjoining communities like Mesa and Chandler are up about 50%. Gilbert is a single-family residential community and it will remain that way, but we have to have a multifaceted approach to housing, which will include apartments. And believe me, there are traffic studies, there are other studies, safety studies, things that are done for each one of those projects. But if you don't make it through the review of those projects, they never come forward to the council. Thank you.
All right, this one is specifically for Scott. Scott, I was not the one who wrote this, so it's a big one. It's a 2-pager. Okay. All right. I did not write this. You tout your many years of experience on council as a reason you would make a great mayor. In multiple campaigns, you identified listening to be a great accomplishment. Yet ethics complaints are cut, public speaking is at the end of town meetings, and at times speakers actually are struck from the agenda altogether. Those of us asking for accountability and improvement from law enforcement and county leadership are even deemed to be, by you, to be rowdy. Can you describe what action you take as mayor to prove to us rowdy mothers that you have not just listened to, but truly heard our concerns? What role does council play when the city's police department hasn't done any type of internal review or consideration on how to improve community relations?
Where do I start? The agendas, we did move the citizen communication to the end of the agenda because the actual work of the council, we do have actual work that we have to do. We have to get that business done, otherwise we're holding many other people in the council chambers. That business has to be done, and it was done more effectively that way. I have never denied anybody the opportunity to speak at a council meeting. There's a time limit for the time that you're able to speak, but I've never denied that opportunity. And I never would deny that opportunity. We have to be able to do that. What were some of the other things that were in there?
Oh, Lord, it was like 300 pages.
I know.
The biggest thing is, can you describe what action you'd like to take so that people feel that they are listened, not just listened to, so not just the time, but truly, that you've truly heard our concerns?
I think the greatest example of what we can show better than any other community that we've listened to you is the establishment of a subcommittee on teen violence. There's no other community that did that. Only Gilbert did it. We met for 6 months, I believe, and listened to the community. And as a result of that, came out things such as the brass knuckles ordinance, the unruly gathering ordinance. Also, the recommendation that council liaisons meet with school districts and begin to address teen violence in different school districts. We established a community task force, community engagement task force, which will be working from August until the end of the year to address teen violence issues. And I think that demonstrates quite well that we are listening, because you won't hear any of that in any other community around us.
Thank you.
Last one, and then we'll come back. There's so many questions, so we're going to go back to the next thing on the agenda, and then we'll come back and open the mic back up if we have time. Otherwise, we'll let you guys communicate with candidates at the end. But adding on to that, Natalie, this is the same, attached to this was a two-parter. Natalie, rowdy moms like, I'm not going to say myself because this is speaking for the community. Rowdy moms like myself do not feel heard by the current city power structure. Over 700 of us have signed a petition to demand an audit of Gilbert PD actions. Do you have concerns about the law enforcement accountability? How do you knew your role in repairing the community's trust in law enforcement?
Yeah, these are hard questions. So I have a very unique perspective, just as my life perspective. My family are victims. And you know what's really unfortunate about it? My daughter was killed in 2017 by her boyfriend. And what's unfortunate about that is people in this very room have accused me of using that for my political gain. Because even me, they don't want to take seriously, because then you have to address a problem. And they're very complex problems. So I am a rowdy mom with you. And part of the problem is the justice system is much more flawed than we recognize. And you don't recognize it until you've been on the side of a victim, right? So it's a very, very important. The Victims Advocacy Center is going to be huge for us. We're going to have highly trained people that can assist the police. The center they're modeling that after has a 95% conviction rating for victims that are processed in that facility because of the way that they handle evidence and because of who interviews the victims. And it's also important that we elect people, like Ms. Godby here, to really enforce things that we do catch. The part of the system was or the audit, was that the other part of the question?
Yes.
It's very long. So actually, I am a leader that believes I'm not an expert in everything, so it's my job to go to the experts and get information. So Kenny, being in command and running with Kenny, I asked him, what do you think? And he has great insight about doing an after-action audit. There are specific after-action review. There are specific audits that we can do that don't jeopardize cases, that won't jeopardize it as a whole, but that will give us the accountability that we're asking for so that we can go back to feeling like our police have our back, because they really do. But something's not quite setting right with us, and we just need to get all that information so that we have the transparency, so that we can feel safe again in Gilbert, knowing our police have our back. Listen, I'm a victims advocate. I've worked with victims for years. I've worked with rape victims, and I can tell you the system is very, very flawed, and we have to just keep fighting and keep going, because every time we have a small win and a small conviction, it sets the system up better. And I'm very personally invested in this. These aren't just victims to me, they're my friends, they're my family, and we have to have, just because we're saying, hey, you know what, we think you missed something, it doesn't mean that the police are bad or they've done a bad job or they're bad people. When we're critical, we grow, we fix things. That is how we make sure that it doesn't ever happen again, because it will happen again, just like it happened with the barn fire. It will happen again because this is the new normal we're living in. So we have to figure out what we can tighten up so that it doesn't keep happening.
Thank you. And thank you for your patience. That is a little bit over an hour. So thank you to the community for all of those questions, and thank you guys for answering all the difficult ones. If we have time, we will answer some more questions. So thank you to all the candidates.